Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that I have my project set up correctly. So I'm going to go into project window, and this time, just like all the other times, is making sure that I go into my work volume for me. That's wherever you guys are working, your thumb drives or wherever that is. And I know that it's under my intro Monday, Wednesday, and I'll call this Minecart. Hitting accept. I'm now going to start constructing my scene. First thing I'm going to do with my scene is start to think about where my front view is. So if my front view is right here, I know that if I make a cube and stretch it this way, that's my front view views as a square, and then the rectangle is going another way. So side, I have a rectangle, I have a square in the front. So that's telling me that this layout, if I wanted my minecart to go left to right in the front view, is going to be set up the right way. So I have a cube. And what I'm going to do with this cube is just kind of scale that down and just bring it maybe around here. And what I'm trying to do is if I duplicate this thing by hitting Control D and then I snap that to the next grid point, I can see where this gap is. I want to make sure that there's enough gap. If I have it too thick and I duplicate it, Control D, there's not a lot of a gap between these two. So I'm just trying to make it so I could figure out a nice width for this piece, because this is going to be called plank. Now that I have this, what I'm going to do is edit, duplicate special this time. And when I open this up, I showed this with the birdhouse when I was making some shingles. This is how we could make a translate of 1, and we can also have a number of copies. So I'm going to tell this thing to give me like 50, and I'm going to hit apply. Okay. So it made the copies, but it's still too thick. So I'm going to back this up, and I'm going to scale that down a little bit. So maybe I'm going to go this big. Good way to tell too is if this is taking up this much space along this line, if I look and put another one right here, you can see, like, I don't want that to go right down the middle. I want enough space to work with that. So I think that might be good. I'm going to hit apply this time. There we go. And now I have some planks. Now, these planks don't serve anything along or other than aesthetic choice for me. So what I'm going to do is go to Mesh, Combine, and I have a lot of history, I can tell, because I have all these empty nodes here. So what I'm going to do again is edit, delete by type history, and now I just have this main shape. Make sure you're doing that. So again, I had lots of stuff, selected it, mesh combine, and then I went into edit, delete by type history. Okay, so now that I have that, we'll call this planks. We can hold down the X key, put it in the middle of our scene, and let's work on some rails. So I'm just going to make another cube. And this time, I'm just going to move this over somewhere, maybe like there. Scale it down. And now scale it up. And so I'm just scaling this so it fits along the rails there. That's looking pretty good. Now I need 2 of these, and I could kind of start to give some finesse to this while I'm working. So what I'm going to do is just grab all of these edges and hit bevel, just to give it a little bit of polish. All right, you could have done that to the planks as well. So I have one rail. I'm going to do a mirror, just like we did with our truck. We use the mirror. I'm going to turn off cut geometry, and I want this to mirror across the z-axis. So if I change that to x, y, z by left-click dragging across, now I have that mirroring over. That is now one solid object. I don't need that moving either, so that's pretty good. I can change the name of this to rails. So I know I have rails and I have planks. Why shouldn't I combine both of these? Well, you can, so it's one main object, but there's no real need for that. And the reason why you shouldn't be thinking about combining all objects into one piece is if you're going to be making a model that has separate areas. In the real world, if these were separate pieces, like the planks and the rails, you shouldn't make those all into one shape. You should have them separate pieces. That's really important because it allows for you to be able to texture things a little bit more efficiently. By having these rails separate compared to the planks, I can just go now into my hypershade, and I'm going to go into my Arnold. So I'll go to Arnold shader and standard surface, and I'm just going to change the color of this to like a brown. Now it's super shiny. To be able to get rid of that, I'm going to reduce the weight of the shininess. I'm going to increase my roughness. And now, if I were to apply that to my planks, they're brown. The name of this is AI standard, not exactly the best name. So where we can change that? In Maya, right here, we can change that to plank. MAT, so material. So now we have a plank material. I'm going to create another AI shader. So another Arnold standard surface. And this time, I'm going to go with, let's say, some sort of metal. So let's say brushed metal. And now that I have that brushed metal, I'll grab the rails and right-click apply or assign. Now it's going to look black in the viewport because there's nothing lighting this. So don't worry, when we allow for some lighting and stuff to show up in there, it'll actually start to look like rails. And now I'm going to call that rails MAT. So these are my ways of labeling things. You do not need to follow. If you want to put the full material or whatever that's called, it's technically not a texture because a texture would be like an image that we're sourcing. A material is the entire everything that's connected to these nodes. So that's why we're using MAT at the end of this, or at least that's why I use that. Now that I have both of these done, time to start working on our minecart. So if I make a minecart, if I go into my cube, bring that up, I'm going to scale that up a little bit here. Sometimes it's a good idea to pull up some reference. Although Minecraft would be the worst reference that you could possibly, the oversaturation of Minecraft, how literally wow, it just doesn't end. I'm going to use this thing because that's a real thing compared to a box. So I'm going to use that and look at it for how I can use some of this for inspiration. I'm just going to scale this up. I am going to go inside of here, holding down the shift key and using scale. I'll allow for myself to have an extrusion. I want to make sure it's even on all the sides, so I'm just evening that out. I'm going to pull down. All right. Now, on these two edges, I'm going to go into my modeling toolkit and hit bevel. Let's give myself some more segments. There we go. I know, I made some n-gons. This is an easy fix for me because there's not a lot of them. So I can count, if I go from here to there, hit the Y key to end that operation, and to start again, I'll just click and click. Now I have quads. I'll do that one more time over on the other side. Click, 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 click. Okay. Now that I have that, I am going to click on my edges that are all of the hold edges I want. Remember, the hold edges are those corners. Anything that we know we want when we do a smooth preview on to stay crisp. So I have all these. I'm going to select the bottom down here too. All right, bevel it up. Beautiful. Hit 3. Wah, wah. What happened? A lot of you had this happen in your headlights too. So there's something that is missing here. What do you think could be missing? There's got to be some spot here that's causing this weird shape to happen. If we look over here, that's probably it. Let me back this train up. Get it? It's a minecart. So now I have these, and let me see if this works. I'm going to press the bevel. And now, free key. Alrighty. Now we actually have something that's not disgusting. Cool. I've got that, but you know what? There's something missing. I kind of really like that little bit of a lip there. So a very quick way to add that. Let's go to multi-cut, and since everything is nice and quadded out, this should work out really well for me. If I go to multi-cut and hold down on the control key, I can add that edge loop all the way around. So I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to cheat. I'm going to do that one more time. From here, if I were to go into vertex mode and grab all of these, making sure I don't have these lower ones, but everything on the top, that's looking pretty good. I don't need the inside either, so I'm going to deselect the vertices that are making up the inner lip of this. So I want to make sure I kind of just have these edges. I'm going to scale that outwards using my green scale tool. Okay. Now, if I use Mesh Smooth Preview, it looks gross. Fixing that is a matter of just double-clicking on that one edge loop I made and pulling that up so it's really close to the geometry that was already there. And if it's still kind of muddled up there, we can just hit the bevel and reduce that fraction. And now in the 3 key, we have a little bit of a lip on there. Super fast way to just give a little bit more definition on our object. Now that I have this, I'm going to just add a little bottom part to this. Nothing more than just a little cube to add, so it's this little base piece. So easy way to do that, shrink down a cube, stick that around here, scale it up a little bit, and then noticing my minecart could probably be bigger, so I'm going to do that, and also moving this up a little bit more. I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to scale that all the way out to about here. Alright, so now that I have this thing, if I wanted to, I can add these little end pieces. This is a very easy thing to do too. Just grab both ends, hold down Shift, scale out, and then now I can grab, let's just do this very quickly by grabbing these. I'm going to use my move tool, hold down Shift, and drag up. So it just gives some more pizzazz to it. Alright, I have these. I'm going to hit bevel, reduce my fraction. So 3 key, that's not bad. Alright, so I've got this thing going on. Now I need to make some wheels. So to make some wheels, I'm going to go into my cylinder and delete it. We're not going to use cylinder. We're going to go into create polygon primitives, pipe. Now that I have this pipe, I can start to think about this as sort of a wheel. And that's a fancy one. We don't need to go that far. Really what I want to do is have some spokes in there so it kind of looks good when I rotate this thing. So what I'm going to do is, let's reduce the thickness of this. So instead of being 0.5, I'm going to go 0.2. From here, I am going to hold down X and snap it on a grid point. And there's a reason why I'm doing this. Is that way I can add another shape in here that I know will be in the middle of it. So now that I have this, I am going to select, maybe not every other. This is up to you aesthetically, how you want to make this happen. Maybe this is mathematically correct. Let's see. 3, 3, 3, 3. Yep. Okay. So now I have these. I only want the inside pieces to make these spokes. So I'm going around making sure I didn't select any other geometry. Holding down the Shift key and grabbing the scale tool, I'm going to do something like this. Okay. Now that I have that, I am now going to go and create a cylinder and snap that right in the grid. So I held down X and snap that right into the section. So because I worked on a intersection in my grid, it was easy to be able to add another piece of geometry on there. Now that I have this, if we look at reference, it comes out a little bit. Like there's this kind of flush piece that goes on the rail, and then there's this little lip that comes out to keep it on the rails. So how do I do that? That's actually a pretty easy thing. Again, if I were to use my multi-cut, cut right here, double click on this edge, and scale that up. Now let's just do some cleanup. So I have this shape. I have this edge loop. I want that one and that one. And basically, I just want the entire outline that I'm going to add a hold edge on. Now, you don't need to go in this exact way. However you want to make your wheels is up to you. I'm just showing you one that's similar to reference of a real minecart. All right, so I got all of these selected. Yep.
The technique you use with the truck on the wheels to make that pattern on the tread.
Mm-hmm.
Could you do that same thing with the actual set of the tires to make it give that spiral look?
Yeah, you could have done that. Yeah, for the monster truck, or
No, I mean for like this example.
yeah.
The actual inside of the wheel. Don't you have it all like how it looks in the reference to like the spiral?
Yeah. Yeah, that could likely work, yeah. Yeah, if that's what you want to try, I would try it to experiment, see if it works. I'm just going to hit bevel. So now I got a bevel. There's my thing here. I'm going to bevel this one and reduce the fraction on that, and that's what I want. So, whoop, it just disappeared. All right, I've got this, I've got that. I'm going to combine it, so mesh combine, and 3 key. Woof. That looks disgusting. So why did it do that? Who knows why this one spot? Whoop, let me move that over. Why did this do that to me? I'll hit the 3 key. That looks kind of weird, right? Something's missing. Hold edge. Which I'm also missing something there too, so that's fun. I'm going to back this up a little bit before I had my bevel. There it is. I'll add that, and I'm also going to make sure I go into X-ray mode and select all 4 of those corners. Anytime, if you see something glitch out like that, don't be scared that it's permanently there. You should be able to undo to get to your geometry before that happens. So just take some practice. I'm going to hit bevel now, and now if I hit 3 on here and then turn off wireframe, it looks a little bit better on there. All right, last bit of little designs on this. I'm going to add a extrusion up on this, and then another set of hold edges here and here. All right, that's good. And I'll add a hold edge again on that since I backed up before I could have that. And same thing here. Whoop. Reduce that. All right. So I got a wheel. Now's a good time to save. So I'm going to do save scene as minecart start for me. Combining this. So I'm going to do a mesh combine. This is where it's really important to keep naming conventions. So in my document, I'm writing that there's a wheel underscore R1. That's how I'm going to name my first wheel. If you do not keep proper naming conventions, this won't work. So you'll also notice there's a name of cart in here. So there's cart, and then there's a wheel R1. We need to make sure that our Maya objects have that in here to make it work. Now again, I don't know how to code. I just know that this is how I need to make this work to make nice looking pieces. So I'm going to take this and go and delete my history. And I'm also going to rotate it 90 degrees and freeze the transformation. So modify, freeze transformation. So now it's 0, 0 there. Now, if I want this thing on the track, I'm actually just going to grab all of these and squeeze that down and make them a little bit thinner. Good. And move this over. So let's say that's my first wheel. So if that's my first wheel, and if I made this thing on the origin, if I use grid snap again, I can kind of make sure that this thing is going to be in the same location if I duplicate that and move it over. Whoop. Duplicate it and move it over using the grid. I know that it'll be equally spaced in the same spot, right? So it's right along. That's 1, 2, 3 in the negative, and 1, 2, 3 on the other side. So good way to be able to make sure things look clean and like they're put together correctly. I have this thing. I'm going to put a stick in there just to make it look a little bit better. You're never going to see this deep into there unless if for whatever reason you look underneath this cart. So not that big of a deal if that's not staying flush. So that if that axle isn't really in there, I'm going to just squeeze that down in case if it's really bothering some people. There we go. So now that I have this, and I have that 3, that's good. Let's name this correctly. I'm going to name this wheel. So wheel for me underscore R1. Now, I'm also going to take this thing and combine it into a shape that I'm going to call cart. So cart. I'm going to delete my history. And now it's just I have cart and I have wheel R1. Here's something really cool that we can do under Windows, Animation Editors, Expression Editor. This thing is crazy. What we can do with this is allow for objects to be linked to other objects. So that way if it was moving or if it was visible or if we're scaling it or we're making custom attributes, all these things will be influenced by another thing. And it really is helpful. So maybe we're making garden shears and we only want to rotate one of the shears, one of the handles. It would rotate the other handle at the same time. So little fun things. Do I understand how this works? No. No. Do I understand what this expression means? Not really. I found it on the internet because I'm not a math person. But I know that this will make a wheel move in relationship to an object when it's rotating. So what I'm going to do is actually take that, copy it, and paste it. And so what this is saying right now is I have an object called wheel R1. Yep, it's selected. And what I want that to do is when the wheel R1 is moved by this cart's translate on X, this is also something. Right now I know this cart is going to move on the X-axis. So when this moves back and forth on the X-axis, I want that wheel to rotate. So I'm going to hit create. Now if I take this thing and rotate it, oh snap. You see that? But what the heck? That's a wheel. Shouldn't wheels go with an object? Yeah. Yeah, you're right. So let's make that happen. What I'm going to take is this wheel, and if I select this and I hit P and now try to move it, there it goes. It's actually following along. So the P key is something called parenting. This is a child, the wheel, and the parent of the child is the cart. Wherever the cart goes, I want that wheel to follow. This is how all rigging will work. In bones, our finger bones are parents of our arm bones, which are then parented to the spine. So when you saw the white mage that we were working on, that was how certain pieces were made. The head is a parent, or the head is a child of the main spine too. So usually everything is connected in a certain way that if something's moving, all the other pieces go along with it. So kind of a basic concept. I'm going to take this and duplicate it. Now, will that keep going? Yeah, kind of. But this one's not going to do the same thing anymore because it needs to have its own expression. What's really cool about Maya, though, check that out. It actually says wheel R2. Even though I duplicated it, it didn't give me a name of like sphere something, something, something. It actually gave me a sequenced number. Maya's pretty smart about that. So if you give something with a number on there, it knows that if another one's duplicated, it will actually give that next sequence. So let's make this happen. I'm going to go into here. I have that wheel R2, and now I'm going to go into my animation editors, my expression editor. I have wheel R2 selected, and I'm going to copy that expression again, and it can't be R1, right? It has to be R2. Let's create. Now, both are going. Now, this is really cool because a lot of the times when people try to do this by hand, it looks terrible to make a wheel roll. So this is just allowing us to actually focus on what we need to, which is Tom Cruise hitting his head on the minecart. So very helpful. All right, now I have both of these wheels. I need to make those go on the other side. So I'm going to mirror, turn off cut geometry, make my axis be on the Z. And oh boy, it's doing some weird stuff. So what I'm going to end up doing here is just taking these, and I'm going to duplicate that, rotate it over. So negative 180. Bring it over to the other side. There's a cleaner way to do this. I'm doing this just for time's sake. I'm going to freeze my transformations again, Windows, or modify freeze transformations. And that's not a wheel R3, although thank you, Maya, for giving me a sequence of this. This should be a wheel L1. So now that I have that named, let's again go into my expression editor. So wheel R1, paste. We're just going to delete that R and put an L and hit create. And then now, that is also rolling. And duplicate, snap it over to this side. Wheel L2, yep. We have to make an expression for it, so we'll just go back into our expression editor. Paste this, or paste that, and L2. Hit create, close this. Okay, we now have a cart that rolls the way it's supposed to. Now is a really good time to save. So again, file, save scene. Oh, I meant to do a save as, but I did an increment, so it's minecart start 0001. That's fine. All right. I have this going on. It is going to be cool, and I think it'll work. Let me just add some material to it. I'm going to make another standard surface, and I am going to make that as, let's call that brushed metal again. But I'm going to drop the color of this. So it's brushed metal. I'm going to make that darker than the other one. And the metalness is kind of determining that shininess that happens on a piece of metal. The specularity of this, let's increase the roughness and drop the color. So I'm going to go, black doesn't look good. We're going to go maybe like a dark brown or something like that. Okay, so I have something like this. You'll notice that metalness is what gives us that sheen around there. That's a little too shiny, so I'm going to reduce that down. And I'm also going to try to, there we go, reduce my roughness in the specular. This is stuff you just have to experiment. You know it's metal, okay, use a metal preset. If it's not looking like a piece of metal that you want to use, start playing with the specularity and the base colors to see if we can get this thing to represent the form that we're kind of going with. So, all right, or the material we're looking for. I'm going to call that cart mat, and let's see here. Actually, let's use this for our wheels, and we'll give our cart a different color. So I've got these, and I'm going to assign that. And I'm also going to make sure that I name that now wheels mat. And I'm going to duplicate this, so Control D to duplicate that material. And we'll call that cart mat. And I'm going to give that color a more of a gray look to it. So going into here, just going into like a dark gray or something. Yeah, that'll be kind of good. All right. So now we'll just apply that to the main body. But hold the phone. Notice when I try and select this, everything's selected. That's a pain in the butt. I just want to be able to apply the material to the cart, not the wheels. Well, if we go into our object on our outliner, we should be able to select pieces individually. And if that isn't working, if you're not able to select just that one part, because you notice you can select the wheels, but the parent you can't select on its own. What you can do is select it and then hit the down arrow on your keyboard, and then just that object will be selected. So I'm going to hit the down arrow. I have that already, and now I'm going to hit assign material selection, and I've got this thing. Now, if you want even more elements of changing this, we can select these bottom ones and make that a darker black or something. But for the sake of time, I'm not going to do that. All right, let's make Tom Cruise. So I'm going to save, and this shouldn't be too hard. It's, there we go. And there we go. So cylinder, I'm going to increase the amount of subdivisions on my height. This is important. If we don't have enough subdivisions on the height, I want this thing to bend. So when it goes forward and backwards, I need it to bend. And if it's only one subdivision, it's not going to be able to bend. It's not enough geometry to be able to do that. I want my height to be maybe like a 5. Basically, this depends on how your scene is set up. You may need it larger or smaller depending on how big your minecart is going to be. I'm going to scale that and say that that's looking just like him. That's great. So I have this set up. I need to parent the head to the body. So I'll call that Tom head. Tom body. And since he is a minor in this movie, let's make a little hat. So I'm going to go and grab all these, flatten them, pull that up. And I mean, this is cheesy hat construction, so not anything fancy, but sake of time, again, if you want to take your time and make a little Tom Cruise hat, good for you. All right, now that I have this, I'm going to make that brim a little bit thinner, and That's fine. All right, let's slap that on Tom. We're gonna take this thing, Tom hat. Scale it up, bring it down. Okay, now let's just give some materials here. Students have found last year, since we are now using Arnold as a renderer, they went in and they it's like, oh, what can I use? We'll use skin. This is dangerous for just one obvious reason that I wouldn't recommend making Tom just a solid skin shape. So let's give him a shirt, because I think you don't want phone calls. So we're gonna hit the down arrow and then make another material for this dude. So we're gonna go into shader and make another one. I had a student do that and it burned my eyes, so please don't do that. We're gonna make just a standard color here, just like what I have, and I'll give him like a little, let's give him blue. There we go. And I'm gonna drop that, I'm gonna increase the roughness and drop the weight of my specularity on here. And again, down arrow to get that one. And the one I just made, I think, is this. So here we go. And I'll just call this Tom Shirt Matte and Tom Head Matte. That's okay. And last but not least, we're going to make one more for his hat. And let's say that that is a form of plastic. We're going to change this to being yellow. And we are going to get that going. And our subsurface also needs to be modified. So I'm going to change that to a yellow. And good. I'm going to grab that hat. And now I have this. So I'm going to hit the 3 key. And I'm going to parent this to this. Hit the P. And now I have Tom. Now, again, if you need to give him eyeballs and stuff, you could do that, but not the point. Let's save again. All right, let me also make sure that it is just going to be you guys in here and not my other row. So uninclude, okay, and show. Okay, we are back. All right. Now I have Tom, and Tom needs a special control. So this is your kind of first rig that you're working on. So I'm going to go into my deform tool, or my deform menu. I'm going to go under nonlinear and use bend. Now if I go into X-ray mode, bend is starting up right here. That's not a good spot for bend to be. I'm going to be moving bend down to the bottom. And I know it's at the bottom if I hold down the V key, which is going to be a vertex snap, and it snaps to the base of that. Next thing is changing the high bound. Because right now, the high bound is set at 1. And if I were to start to bend this, so I'm going to go into my bend modifier in the attribute right here. That's starting to look pretty good. But watch what happens if I didn't change where this middle part was. Look at that mess. Look at that hat, right? Some of you may want to do this to Tom. I don't mind it. But Tom, this is painful. So let's change this. And the way we change it, we just got to modify the handle. So that's under the channel box in the editor. Under inputs, our high bound needs to, well, first we need to move it. So this middle part needs to be at the bottom. And that way, it's still going to do that weird curling on both ends. But now, it's not going to affect anything else because it's out of that range, right? So this little arrow, or this little line, isn't anywhere where our geometry is. So now if I were to do that under my attribute editor, I don't know why it changed the name, but if I were to do this, it's looking a lot better. So that's looking pretty good. However, right now, I still have a little bit more to go that I can have him bending. Because right now it's just up to this point. I want that head to come down more. So, just going to modify that again by going into my high bound, and I'm going to give that like maybe a 1.2. And there we go. Once my keyboard starts working. Okay, 1.2 goes into the neck. That may be a little bit too far, so let's try 1.1. Okay, 1.15 maybe? There we go. Okay, so now that I have that, let's go into, so we have the bend selected. We're going to go to the attribute editor, and we're going to go under, that's the bend. I don't know why that got renamed. You can rename your control. So that's my bend. I'm going to, there we go. So now it's curving as much as this possibly can. How do we get him inside of the cart? Well, let's grab Tom and move. Oh, wait a minute. That didn't come with it. Let's grab this and move it. Zute. Oh. So we need to take the bend handle and parent that to the body. So now that character is inside the minecart with this control, and I'm going to go and turn off X-ray. Wow, it looks just like a scene from Mission Impossible 37. This is so realistic, right? So what I'm going to do now is start to test out, can Tom handle this? Yes. Tom is going to have a great time in this ride. There we go. So he's going to hit his head. He's going to hit his head again. But you know what? Maybe we want to move him up a little bit more. So I'm going to grab Tom's body, move him up a little bit more. And then now, oh yeah. Bam, bam, bam. I love it. So there are other things that we'll be doing to Tom in this course. We will be putting him in a guillotine, some other fun stuff. So we got some stuff going on. I need him to move when this moves. So again, we grab Tom's body and we hold down Shift, select the minecart, hit P, and now little Tommy here, we hit the S key on our keyboard, set a key, and then let's say that at frame 30, we're going to go over to here, hit the S key. Whoop, my pivot point kept going. All right, so now it's going there. Maybe again at frame 60, it's going to go back to the beginning. Now let's make Tom slam his head. So, Tom's probably going to start alert, right? He's hopefully not asleep in this minecart. We want to wake him up if he's not, so he should be standing upright. I'm going to hit the S key to start this. Actually, let's not even hit the S key. We're going to just set him right inside of here, the curvature. So what I'm going to do is right-click Set Key on my curvature controls. Remember, if you can't find that, make sure your handle's selected. And then make sure you're in the attribute editor and you're looking for the bend controller. So now curvature set at 0. As this moves forward, right probably before this ends, right around here, let's have him go back a little bit. And now, oh, it helps if I hit the key. So one thing I'm starting to realize too, it might be better for you guys if you don't do set key just on this handle. You can't see it down here. So as much as I like you guys to be clean and efficient with your animations and not have to have a lot of extra keyframes, it's really going to be important, I think, for you to be able to see this. So I'm going to make sure I have that handle selected again. I'm in the handle control. And I'm going to hit the S key. And then now I'm going to go to frame, let's say 27 or so. It's up to you guys. I'm going to use the curvature and increase that handle, hit S, and now, hey Tom, come on. Doesn't want to do that. So let's, all right, we just have to key these by hand, and then we'll see them later on. So here he goes. Hey, Tom. He is sometimes difficult to work with, I've been told. So there we go. So set key, right-click set key. You'll know it's there. He's going back, and then When it stops, it's going to be follow through, right? So when that stops, he's going to go forward. So that overlapping action of him going backwards. So this is moving, but he's going to move at a different rate at first. So his head's going to go back. And then as we stop this, he's going to have follow through. And then we're going to grab that curvature. Bam. And then maybe a little bit further. We'll move that down a little bit. Set key. There we go. And then we'll make a copy of our minecart frame. Copy. So 30 to 60. Paste. So now we can start to get some reaction on him. So he's going, it's speeding up, slams his head, and it's starting to move again. Now, we don't probably want this cart to move back and forth, back and forth. Let's have it go at this point, and let's make a hold. So copy, maybe at frame 35, we'll have it hold. So have Tom catch his breath for a second, and maybe have him react, like, oh, I just slammed my head. What's going on? And then maybe he can pop up in the air. So we can grab Tom, and then at a certain point, maybe he jumps up in the air, totally freaked out that he is going for the ride of his life. And then now, it's a little subtle, so I can hold down Shift to select all these keyframes, move this into a closer position. There's that little hop, like, oh, I'm so startled. And then he's going the opposite direction. So this is where we can start to get some performance on Tom. We're using our move on Tom's body, and we're using the bend handle to get that to animate. Now, one last thing I want to try here. Let's see. You may be able to get the... No, I don't think we're going to get that to show up. Let's see. Curvature. I meant to do 15. That is not the same. Okay. Heads up. If you use the attribute editor and the bend handle, in here, by default, the keys will not show up in the timeline. If you were to use the channel box and layer editor under bend handle, it does show up. But the issue is that you have to kind of manually key in what that curvature is going to be. So there's pros and cons. Attribute editor allows for you to just drag this point around, but you don't really see the keys. There's a way that we can display that. I'll show that. Let me dig around to show you that a little bit later. But I would recommend, if you'd rather visually see these so you can move them around, do that under your channel box and layer editor and just input the values by hand there so you can have that number or that keyframe show up for this. Last thing I want to show before we cut is I'm going to make a camera that follows. So I'm going to go to Create. I'm going to go into my cameras with an aim. And I'm going to go into two-panel view. And I'm going to look through my camera 1. And I'm going to kind of frame this so the camera is looking at Tom. Now, I want to make sure that I have this on. That is my gate, and that's my res gate. So the resolution is what is going to be captured. It's very helpful to see where everything is going to be when I render. Now that I have that going on in the camera, I can just zoom in just like perspective view. Make this one perspective. All right, so now let's animate this thing. I'm going to hit the S key to animate that. And then I know from here to probably frame 30, that is going to go out of bounds from what my camera can see. Now this camera has an aim on it, so if I drag that over, now I can move that camera back and forth, and that character will always be in frame, which is kind of nice because you're keeping it as a constant, and it's got to update. That's why it looks a little bit glitchy there, but that is very, very helpful for me. So I can have this thing animating for this. So another thing we can do is if we have that aim, so if I have my camera aim, you notice I could rotate this thing around. So instead of it doing that, perhaps it's going to go from there to over here. So it's at 1, that's where I want it to be. At 30, let's have this stay here, and now we look at it, the camera is going to stay pretty much stationary and move around. I don't know why it's not updating like it should have been, but it's going to follow, but it's going to turn but stay stationary. So I would recommend play with the aim. The aim is going to be pointing at what you're looking at, and then your actual camera you can animate and have that do things like zooms ins and outs. But notice because I have that aim there, it's always going to stay on that one location. Very helpful. And that's how we'll want to animate or render this, is with a camera like this. Which when we render, we no longer want to just go by perspective. We'll change that to camera 1. All right, I'm going to let you guys start messing around with this.